We're spending more than ever.
I hate my job.
The price of everything has gone up.
AI is threatening my job.
It's crisis after crisis.
Nothing is working out.
I can't find a job.
We're one disaster away.
Take control of change.
I need a change.
Disruption is the force of change. Stop the chaos. Stop the madness. Take control. Read James Patterson's Disrupt Everything and Win.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.
Shopify versus WordPress SEO for website e-commerce optimization. Shopify versus WordPress SEO for website e-commerce optimization. This is the room that we are going to discuss some very important things that I believe you as a business owner or someone who is planning to have a business will definitely need to have as an informational, I'll call it database, however you want to call it, so that you can choose between these two. And these are also very highly effective platforms. So if you're trying to choose between the two, you can definitely use either or. None of them is over the other. It's just that you want to use what's best for you. Great companies that we know today use Shopify. Great companies that we know today use WordPress. So it's not a one size fits all. And even if you think about your industry, it is a good option to choose basically where you want to have your e-commerce stemming from. So if you have a Shopify account, then your Shopify account is going to have a completely new build-up setup based on the theme codes, based on the products, the catalogs, the categories, and everything just works easily, smoothly. You shouldn't have a problem with that with Shopify. Now with WordPress, that's a little different. And before we even get into SEO, I wanted to say hello to you as well that's in the house. Health and Wealth Coach, thank you for being here. Santrina and Theron, I hope I said the name correctly. Thank you for being here. And anyone as well who's listening to this, I thank you for listening to this point. WordPress SEO is different because on WordPress, you deal with plugins, right? If you want to have an LMS, right? This is just for e-learning purposes. You need a plugin. Now, if you want to run a product store on your WordPress site, you need to have a WooCommerce store. When you have a WooCommerce store, it's because you have a WooCommerce plugin. So you'd have to go to WooCommerce and get the plugin for WooCommerce and connect it to your website. Not every WordPress has a store, right? So it's very important to look at that and see where that's going to stem from, mostly for you. Welcome, Malama. So when you think about your business long-term, it's good to see you. It's been a while too. Hello, long time. Welcome back. When you look at WordPress SEO, it's going to take a lot of maintenance. It's going to take a lot of updates. We just had it happened twice in the span of 2 weeks where one client in one state Actually, they are both in the same state, and now come to think of it, but they're in completely different areas and they do two different things. One of them hadn't logged into his website in a while because we had set it up and, you know, they're running well, they're doing well, they're having a great business run. And then I got a call. He was like, hey, I need help with the website because for some reason I can't log in. I can't seem to see what's going on. So I was like, when was the last time you logged in? Because we're not managing the site. This is something that we did a while ago, and it's a whole year has gone by. And, you know, we set up everything and it's great, but we still keep great connections and friendships and relationships even after business is done. So he's like, oh, we haven't logged in ever since the last time. And I said, what? You guys haven't logged in? Okay. So I had to do a whole reset. And from doing the reset, I sent him the information and he went in and he had a whole lot of orders from his site that he had never even seen. Because with WordPress, there's something called, I won't even say there's something called, I'll just say in general, when you have a website on WordPress, maintenance is going to be a big key factor. Because when you have to upload plugins and then you have to update the plugins, and those plugins are not on auto update, sometimes when they're not updated automatically, it can cause your website to slow down or have a critical issue or a temporary issue, and that's not going to be good. And if you think about what it sounds like in terms of sound, it sounds like that. Means that you don't have access, you don't have any gateway, it is access denied, and it's not a good thing. So how to get away from that and turn that from a red to a green is to either do one of these two things. One is to do it yourself and at least spend at least 1 hour a week. At least 1 hour a week, maybe during your downtime or before things get busy in the morning or in the day. Spend that 1 hour and go through your website and see if there's anything that needs to be updated or plugged in or, you know, looked into if you're doing it yourself. The other option is to hire it out. Hire an agency, hire a business to do it. We can do that for you as well. When you hire it out, you won't have to worry about those things because there are things that are in place. There are monitors that are in place. So, and that's what you're paying for. You're also paying for the convenience of also knowing that you're not going to have a broken link or a broken site or a downtime site. It's a huge deal. So those are very many things to look into. Another client that we worked with, she had something as well in the same area where she couldn't upload her plugins because she hadn't logged in and she wasn't managing it herself, but she was doing it and just, you know, taking her time to rebuild. But now she's ready to rebuild, but she had to now go back in. But because it wasn't updated after a long time, all the previous updates, welcome Austin and Iris and Altanzul, I hope I said it correctly. Please forgive me if I said it wrong. All those updates have been missed. So imagine if you've missed all those updates, where your website would be now. So with WordPress, it's a little tricky. It's a great platform to use, but it's a platform that would need consistent updating, consistent maintenance. That's why I was saying at least use once a month if you're doing it on your own. But this is something that can be done by monitoring it automatically if you have someone that's doing it for you. So we were able to get that sorted out too. Another thing too is with your content, when you think about your website, especially as an e-commerce business, the way people are going to enjoy your product or even have an experience with your product on your website is going to be based on speed. How fast is your website? How fast does your website load? Hey, Nikki, welcome. If your website doesn't load fast, and it's not just fast on mobile, it has to be fast on mobile, it has to be fast on desktop, it has to be fast on tablet. Those are websites, or I can even call them platforms that websites will be loaded from. So if you're thinking about your website too, it's very important to consider these options for e-commerce optimization purposes. So if you have a Shopify account, a good thing to practice with Shopify is that when you upload your images, compress them first. Before you upload them, compress them. Because when you compress your images, right, you're compressing your images to make sure that you have a fast loading site. Imagine if you had 50 products and each of those products are 5 megabytes and each product has 5 variations. So that's 5 megabytes times 5 variations, which is 25 times 50 products. So when you really do the math and you start adding things up, it starts to count. It starts to compound. It starts to increase. It starts to add up. So it's very important to think about it. Austin, Iris, I think you're making Austin hungry with the Indomie noodles, and he likes it salty. So it's a good evening, and I hope you're enjoying your space and your time here. Welcome, Alberto and Reza. I see you as well. Shin, thank you for being here too. So these are very important things to consider, right? I would say if you want to start this off easy, if you're beginning from scratch and you don't want all the hustle and bustle of updates and maintenance and plugins and this and that, use Shopify. Use Shopify. Start with Shopify. But the thing about Shopify is don't just use any Shopify theme. Don't just buy any Shopify theme. There's a process on how to get the right theme, because if you use a Shopify website, you technically have to buy a theme, right? And when you buy a theme, you're buying it from a developer or you're coding it from scratch. It's either one or the two. It's either this or that. It's binary code. So if you're going to use Shopify, ensure that your theme is SEO friendly. It's good on mobile, it's good on desktop, it's good on tablet. Those are some things to consider. You won't have to worry about that with WordPress, because with WordPress, you're building on Elementor, or you're building on Divi, or you're building on Cornerstone, or you're building on any other builder that you have within WordPress. So these are very important things to consider, right? So when you have an e-commerce business and you're using either Shopify or WordPress, it's very highly important and essential to look into your images. Don't ignore your images. Don't just put photo-123.jpg or .png or .webp. Those are not going to fly because you're not putting yourself in the right algorithm. If you sell socks and you sell socks and bundles of socks, or you sell Christmas socks, or you sell Thanksgiving socks or Valentine socks, those words are going to matter, because when people are looking for comfortable socks to wear for Valentine's, yours will show up as a result because you were able to put that into the algorithm. Welcome, Noah and Safi. You were able to put that into algorithm. And it's not just because you're putting it there, it's because you're logging it in. Think about it like a library. A library is not a library if the library is not organized. So if you go into a library, you're going to a library because you're going to get books from a shelf that has context from a topic of interest that you walked through or you picked from. So if that's the same scenario, your website is like a book. That's why we call it web pages. There's websites, there's web pages, there's web links. Welcome, Juliana. We have these web sites for a reason. So when you have a Shopify site different from a WordPress, these sites are always going to have their own kinks. But the moment you realize that you start compressing your images with a website like compressor.io, and you compress it, if it's under 10 megabytes, you upload it to your website and you rename the keywords correctly. Put them in the right file names. If you sell socks, all these socks have to be called socks. Red socks, blue socks, green socks, yellow socks, fluffy socks, silk socks, cotton socks, whatever you want to call them, they're going to have to be in those file names. Then when you upload them and you're building that within your e-commerce platform, that is also contributing to your success. It's not just putting or taking a picture of socks and putting it on the web and saying, hey, here are my socks. No, you'd have to structure it from the ground up. So when someone's looking for that under Google search or under ChatGPT, they can find you because you actually named those products and you actually call them what they are, because that's what people search for. But if you left it as photo PNG, then that photo is just a photo. It has no context, it has no value, it has no search traffic, it has no demand. So that's really where it comes to play. And we're going to talk about this today. Hey, Juliana, glad to see you here. Any comments? Thanks for being here today.
I'm recovering from taxes. Today was the last day to get the extended returns in, so my voice is a little bit low, but he's giving away the store, you guys. You better be taking notes. He taught me this 4 years ago when he did my SEO for me, so please take notes. What he's giving you is gold.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you. It's very important, to get your taxes done. One, that's very important. As a business, you have to do that. Secondly, you have to look at your business from a very serious standpoint when you are looking for value and the exchange of value in what you provide, whether it's in form of a website, a logo, a customer service, a link, an email, sign up, whatever it is, that's going to have an exchange of value. And it's either going to be determined by you or the person you send it to. But if it's valued by you, then they can also see the value that you have. Think about it this way. If you don't take yourself seriously, no one will take you seriously, right? So it's as much as you take yourself seriously that you'll be taken seriously. That's why there's a saying, dress how you want to be addressed. So if you're dressing up for a reason, then there's a kind of expression, there's a kind of feeling that you're expecting back in return. So it's the same thing with your website, the aesthetics, the layout, the links, the format. These all play a big role into it as well. Iris says, also, SEO optimize all text matters too. Yes, 100% it does. It matters a lot. And thank you for bringing that up too. It matters in your emails. It matters in your products, inside your own products, right? Each and every product has it. Even in your Instagram, it's there. In LinkedIn, it's there. So it's in your email for some of them that have it. So if you're looking at alt text, which is alternative text, if you're describing these socks and you're using the keywords in them, let's say your screen doesn't load, there's going to be a screen reader. And if it's screen reading that text, it's going to put you in that context. So e-commerce is so important because when you don't look into these things, you might just miss them. People use Shopify and WordPress every day, but there's some things when I look at them, like if this was changed, if this was altered, it would change a lot, because it's not just how your website looks, it's how it operates, it's how it feels and how it moves, because everyone is looking at your website and it's loading at different places at different times. But at the same time, your website is also going to be the cornerstone for how people will perceive you when they go to social media and also other sites as well. So you can use Shopify, you can use WordPress, but both of them are going to come at a different cost, because with Shopify, you can pay for that every year when it comes to your theme, when it comes to your plan. With WordPress, you pay once. You pay for your hosting once, or once a year, of course. You pay for your custom theme, but you don't have to keep paying for your WordPress browser, if I can put it like that. Because if you look at Shopify, you have to keep renewing it to make sure you have that active. But on WordPress, once your site is built, that's it. Now, what you're maintaining to keep that website active is your hosting, which is coming from Hostinger, SiteGround, Bluehost, GoDaddy, wherever you go to, that's going to be the respondent. Just not too long ago, I was supposed to have done this room about an hour ago. Yeah, about an hour ago, but I couldn't because I got an emergency, call from a client, and we had to solve a problem because for some reason, I would say Hostinger did something where it made a default exchange on the records, and then it now triggered off her email, so she was not receiving any emails. And we're like, what's going on? Why are you not getting any emails? So we realized that the company that we moved over to with the domain from one domain apparently put their own records without even asking, which was so weird. So when you look at all these platforms, sometimes you may not think, you might just freak out. You're like, oh my goodness, my emails are not working. And you realize it's because of these things. So if you're having from one place to the other, these are very important things to consider, because this is where traffic is picking up from. So we had to call GoDaddy, go on a 3-way line. They talked about their records, and I was like, yeah, we moved the records, and GoDaddy doesn't give you the records until you ask for them. That's another thing about GoDaddy that I don't really like, is their name servers. You have to call them to change the name servers, and then when you change it, they kind of like give you a default off. So if you move it to another platform, it doesn't move along. It's really weird. Yeah, so we had to literally like do a full recheck. I had to scan literally every line in her DNS record, fixed it. I had to do tests like 5 times. The first time I did it, bounced. The second time I did it, bounced. The third time I did it, bounced. I said, okay, let's see what's going on here. So I checked again, did a reset. Then until the 5th one is when I said, okay, I know what's going on here. And I fixed it. So we did another test and it went through. So she's good now. And she's a realtor. So if you think about how people are operating by business, with emails, with websites, with e-commerce, with SEO, with DNS records, with all these things, it's very important. Why am I giving this example? Because even with Google Search Console, you still need to go back to that same DNS. The DNS is the DNA of a website, really. That's what I call it. Your DNS records, which is your domain name server records, is technically the DNA of your website. So if your DNA is not operating at a high capacity, your body is not going to feel the same, because your performance is going to be depleted. So if you're looking at the same thing on your DNS records, if there are codes in there that are mismatching or misaligning, or they're not actually pointing to the right servers, then you're going to be mismatching, and that's going to cause an error, which makes your website go down. So there's so many things to think about in these scenarios when, clients would say, hey, it's down, and she was freaking out. And I was like, don't worry, I got it. Earlier this morning, another client was saying that I think something happened to the hosting. It zapped out about 15 different versions of the website. So we had to now look for a way to back it up and go back to the control panel. Another client was saying that he lost about almost 200 blogs. We've had a situation where somebody else lost about 500. And it's not even the fault of anyone. It's just the servers. They can just do how you can just have a power trip in a house? That's what happens on a website. So these things happen. So that's why I'm very specific on this topic, because I've seen different stories, and the more I know, the more I don't know. So I always like to make sure that when I see these things, and I've gone through them before, I've experienced them, and I see how clients hump or get over the hump, we don't make that happen again. And if it happens again, we know where it came from. If it happens the first time, we know what caused it. So this is the internet. Things happen. Things change, things migrate. Some websites, you lose traffic for a whole year. We see it pick back up after 3 months. So it's not about just how the website looks. Again, it's how it operates. So that's why I'm being very specific about this topic today. Reza says, what do you think of GoDaddy marketing packages and tools? That's a very good question. GoDaddy's marketing and tools. I want to say this very well. GoDaddy is a great company, right? But right now, especially we're going into Web 3, we're technically in it, but not really so much in it. GoDaddy products, their tools, I wouldn't do too much with their tools or with their products. GoDaddy is majorly known for domains. That's what they're majorly known for. So if they're majorly known for domains, GoDaddy is also connected to Microsoft. They partner with Microsoft. That's why when you buy a hosting package or you buy a mailbox on GoDaddy, you're going to be redirected to Microsoft Outlook. That's what I was doing today. We were trying to put the Outlook records back into DNS records for GoDaddy from Hostinger because they were pointed differently with the mail exchange records. So I was looking at all these records and I'm like, okay, how do we exchange this, connect the dots? It's kind of like trying to jumpstart your car, red, black, trying to figure out where's what or what's where. That's the same thing that was going on today. So with GoDaddy, their support is great. But when it comes to their tools and their marketing tools and their services and building a website on GoDaddy, if you're starting, I would say you can use it, when you want to scale, you can do that. But if you want to, have something that's custom built, that has more detail, that has more of I won't call it a sophisticated operation, but something that has more of a robust, comprehensive way of, I'll call it user experience with the website, I wouldn't use GoDaddy. Even hosting wise, I wouldn't even use GoDaddy. Anytime we start a new website, we build a new website for a client, or we want to move them, we say, hey, if you're on GoDaddy, let's move you from GoDaddy, because we've had scenarios with GoDaddy, especially like what has happened with this, because you're trusting your website into these servers. These servers are serving you. They're serving your website. So if anything happens to the server, it's going to go back to them. So if you're not in a server that has great bandwidth, and then the platform you're on doesn't have bandwidth that's going to sustain the amount of traffic you can get, it's going to turn into a negative. So all these things I'm saying is like under the hood, so that when you think about e-commerce optimization, you're standing strong. You have a strong house. You have a strong foundation because you're unshakable. Everything is tight. That's how it should be, but sometimes we don't see those looks and crannies. So that's why I'm giving these examples, so that when you hear them, you may never have heard them before, or maybe you have a story similar to it, or maybe something even crazier that I've never heard before. But all the same, it boils down to how you operate your website and how you structure it. So it's very important to think about these things long term as well. Juliana, you asked about which is better, Shopify or WordPress. Now, my next question would be, what do you want to use a website for?
The thing is, I've done both. And WordPress, because I don't have the technical background, I was pulling my hair out. So I gave up on them. So that was what I'm curious about. Which one would be better? But you have a better question. What do you need your thing for? So if it's for selling, like, for right now, I got a third business, the African jewelry. So if it's for selling, would you say Shopify is better than WordPress?
For selling, I would say Shopify is better than WordPress, because Shopify technically has been built in a way that allows most people to shop in a very convenient way. They've partnered with so many integrations and systems and third-party platforms, whether it is Klarna, or, it just keeps going on and on. They have a lot of apps within, just like the way WordPress has plugins, Shopify has apps. So with those apps, they're free or paid, and it's very flexible to use. And as long as you're having a good plan with Shopify, you're good to go. So I would say Shopify is great for e-commerce. It's also great with WordPress, but if you're not using like WooCommerce and ShipStation and all these things that you have to interconnect, it starts to get very robust and comprehensive in the technical setup. But if you want something that's just smooth, easy to go, upload your content, launch your website, just keep checking it once every other day or once every other month, I would say Shopify is way safer and way more friendlier than WordPress when it comes to those kind of, setups.
Okay, so there goes my jewelry. I'm going to be working with Shopify now that taxes is over. I'm going to be playing. Thank you.
You're welcome, Juliana. That was a great question. Thank you for that. And thank you for being here as well. Kimberly, I see you. Ruth, Sana, she's laughing too. Philly, Barbara, thank you for being here. Manuel, I see you all. Thank you for being in this space. If you have a question, please put it in the chat and let's talk about it. This room is for you. I just don't want to tell you things. I want you to hear the right things that's going to help you make the next best decision for your business. Austin says, I like WordPress, but if you are on multiple marketplaces with more SKUs, I always call them SKUs or SKUs, and constantly changing product listings, then some people prefer Shopify. That is true. WordPress is great, but when it starts getting complicated with those numbers, it starts getting very detailed. One thing I love about Shopify, though, is when I look at the products, because literally right now, I'm let me say it to you so you can visually think about what I'm saying or picture what I'm saying. I have a split screen in my head, and one side is Shopify product settings, and the other side is WordPress settings. So this is what I'll say. When it comes to Shopify, I love Shopify, and I'm looking toward the left. I love that Shopify has areas where you can put variations, colors. You know, they have the SEO metadata that's already inbuilt. You can put that at the very bottom of that page. If it's, you know, how is it pounds? Is it ounces? You know, you can add those things there. The descriptive text is there. You can now also use HTML formatting, which means you can now highlight in bold if you want to do FAQs about this product, or you want to do ingredients, or whatever you want to do with your business or your product listing. You can do that within that description box. And then you can add coupons, you can add codes. On the farthest right, it shows where your social channels are or your sales channels are. It will say Facebook and Instagram. It will say TikTok. It would say Pinterest. It would say anything else that you're connected to. If it's Google Merchant, or, you know, you'll have them all there. So that's a really good way of being very extensive. With WordPress, it's a little different. Now you'd have to click on products, and then inside products, you'll now have those different things. If you don't have products, normally it's pages and posts. Usually in WordPress, that's where mostly your website is, I would say 95% of the time. Pages and posts. But now when you have products, that's a whole new section of your website. So in that product section is where you now have all the details. You can click on the product, you can choose, you can do a featured image, you can set it up just like you're setting up a blog. But now it's a little different, and it will give you all those different things, you know, within the search fields. But if you don't know how to use WordPress and you're using a WordPress site to make those edits, especially after someone has built your website, you would probably need some training to go through when it's like a handover, because we do that as well with you. If you choose WordPress, then we'll show you, you know, train you if it's you or your staff. We'll make sure that you understand what you're doing with the platform, because a time is going to come that you'll need to look at your website and log in and see what's going on. It's kind of like you can't leave your house locked. You have to unlock your house at some point to get in. So it's the same thing with your website. People are visiting every day, so you want to see what they're visiting and where they're going consistently, especially if you set those things up. So it's good to look at your product listing that way, so it's not stressful. And even with the SKU numbers, like Austin said, when you have those things in place, it's easier for you to change them compared to WordPress when it starts to get very complex. So Shopify wins, honestly, when it comes to setup and e-commerce, but WordPress is also there if you really want to go deep into sophisticated marketing, if I can say it like that. And then Reza says, sorry if I said it wrong, please correct me. Even for businesses that sell services, yeah, even if you sell a service, you can use Shopify. You can use WordPress too. There's really no which or which this or that. There's really no say like, oh, I got to use this for that reason, but it really depends on the operations and how you want to move on it. So I'll give you some more detail and explain a little further. Juliana, what are your thoughts on this too? I'll come back to that too.
Listen, brother, I want to stay away from WordPress as far as I can be. It's like people running away from IRS. I don't want anything to do with WordPress. I've been through them and I almost pulled my head out. So Shopify any day.
That was funny. You know, it's true. WordPress can get very, 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 very complex, but it doesn't have to be. It's just that if you don't know it, it's just going to happen that way. But if you sell services, I would say use WordPress. Now I'm switching, so because I want to go somewhere with this, because we've been dealing with products. If you sell products, use Shopify. If you sell services, use WordPress. You can also use Shopify. You can also use products for WordPress. So I'm not saying that this is for that and this will never work with that. It's just that when it starts to get complex, or when it starts to get tedious, when it starts to really start turning wheels, you don't want to get to a point where you're like, man, I wish I just picked this one instead of the other one. So kind of like looking 5 years ahead and seeing what you want to tolerate, what you want to work with, what you want to use, and what you want to, maintain and build, which is, I would say, low maintenance with Shopify. But if you're doing a service, I would say do it on WordPress, because when you do a service page or you have service business on WordPress, it really gives you that aesthetic that you're looking for, right? 43% of the websites in the world, there are 1.1 billion websites, and 43% of the websites that are built are on WordPress. School websites, hotel websites, government websites, medical websites, hospital websites, most of them are used on WordPress. That's 43%. The rest of them, Wix, Shopify, Webflow, Tilda, Duda, the list is endless. So you can use them in different platforms, but it's a setup. So my question to you would be, what's the service? And then from there, I'm able to now know, what you can also do. And I love that you said this too as well, Austin. You can use both. Both can handle services. WordPress is less expensive, especially over time. Yes. And anyone afraid of it can easily be assisted by AI, ChatGPT, and tons of on YouTube tutorials. That is true. Definitely not that technical, but yeah, it definitely has a switch on that. And Malama says, I moved my jewelry business from Wix to Shopify and I like it. Yes. I love that. It's definitely a completely different switch. Right now we're switching a company's website from WordPress to Shopify because she can't deal with WordPress edits and updates and maintenance. So she just wants something simple that's workable. She can log in, and that's what we're about to do for her website. And she sells natural cleaning products, that are eco-friendly as well. So it's exciting to see how people are just switching and actually getting to know what they actually want as well. I see Shashinda said something. Hire someone to set up your WordPress site with WooCommerce, and after that, you can easily manage your businesses with WooCommerce mobile app. Just a thought. Yeah, that's another thing too. You can use WooCommerce app, but at the same time, when it comes to those technical setups and changes, and you got to go to the desktop and you don't know how to use it, if you are not trained, or if you don't have someone that's, accessible, then it can start to get really, really dicey. So that's just, something too. But yeah, like you said, if someone would love Shopify and its interface kind of things, but want to self-host, then give it a try. Just give it a try for Medusa, just saying. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense, based on what you want to do. And I think the option is yours. I'm not saying do this or do that, because I would never tell you what to do, but I'll definitely give you the information so you can make a better decision. Austin, we'd love to hear from you too. What are your thoughts on the topic? Thanks for being here.
Hey, Favour. Good evening, guys. And hey, Juliana. Good to be here with you. So yeah, I like this topic, and I won't pretend to be an expert, but I have my clients in a past life used to deal with this issue all the time because I'm a former kind of supply chain and logistics person. And from the technology side, all of our clients were, product shippers who had this problem where they're e-commerce sellers and they're trying to connect their shopping carts to all these warehouses and other places for us to fulfill their orders. And, it's a common problem. So one of the things, like, for instance, Shopify really is great. It is easy to use. And if you're not technical and if you have the budget, I agree with you, Juliana, you should definitely just use that, especially if it's not your zone of genius, like someone said in the chat here. But I will say that if, some of these former clients of mine, were $5 million, $50 million shipper companies who may have 100 or 500 different SKUs. And, even Shopify isn't great at handling that, even though many great, large, and sometimes even publicly traded companies proudly use Shopify. And so, there are other alternatives for those companies who have a lot of product needs, if you will. But I think that if you're a simple or small business or a solopreneur and you're under 10 or 25 SKUs, I think WordPress is a great alternative. It's open source. There's a ton of tutorials. And if you want to outsource, everybody on Fiverr or Upwork knows WordPress. So there you go. I think that they're really all are great options, and you don't have to go with, one of those big alternatives like a Magento or a BigCommerce or some of the other alternative e-commerce sites that are more kind of enterprise grade. I think those are all above most of our needs for those of us in this room currently.
I was just about to say Magento as you said that, because it's definitely a completely different zone of e-commerce when it comes to those type of products and listings, especially when you're integrating with like AWS, Amazon Web Services. We have a client that we're working with that is on that platform like that, and seeing the way things are done and how you have, people are searching based on part numbers, searching based on model numbers. It's not just, I'm looking for red socks. It's so different. So when I look at SEO and e-commerce now, it's like, okay, you have to really think outside the box. You can't just be trying to do a keyword for a blog, yet there's a whole world out there waiting for something that you can offer that could be in the form of a link that is accessible through a server. So that's why I'm really, meticulous about this. But you're definitely right, Austin. Just depending on how many products you have, you could use Shopify and just get it started, or you can use Wix, and get it going. You can use WordPress and, it can definitely grow for you. And also think about this too. WordPress is open source. Like you said, when it's open source, you can do a lot of things compared to like Shopify, Wix, where it's not as open, because you have to be restricted based on the website builder and what they offer. So if they say move this block here, just like with GoDaddy, with their website builder, that's all it is. So you can't really integrate or do anything outside that until you become outside those, sections. Even Manuel says that I use WordPress through HostGator and they have great support. I like their support. Yes, they do have great support too. So all these platforms that you're on will have a WordPress hosting. So if you look at all these big companies, all of them would say WordPress hosting, because they know that eventually when you buy a hosting server, or when you want to get hosting for your website, you're technically going to end up on WordPress. That's kind of like an almost default mode, unless you want to like switch it up or be alternative to do other things. But more likely, or most likely, you would be on WordPress. That's what usually happens as well. Butter says lots of templates, but there is a learning curve. Also, the product presentation requires some skill. Yes, that's an important part of your image or brand. You do not want to appear unprofessional in your presentation of products and services. 100%. That is true. Juliana, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, even when it comes to the skills and the tech.
Yeah, so I know Favour is shy. He never promotes himself, but you guys, he's got memberships that teaches you how to do all these step by step. You can either have him do the basic consult with you so that you know how to navigate it, and then going through his membership, you'll be able to manage if you're on a small scale business and you don't have big budget. The courses are the best way to do it. That's exactly what he did with me 3-4 years ago. And so every 6 months or so, then you get him in to make sure that you are not breaking anything, which I have a habit of breaking things, So he's there to help you. Somebody mentioned Fiverr. The trouble with Fiverr is a lot of them don't know enough, just like you don't know enough. So they break things more than they help you. So it's better to get somebody who is a true expert and also learn through his little short courses. So that I just wanted to let you know, he's got programs to help you navigate this as a small business.
Thank you, Juliana. I don't really talk about this a lot, and I need to do it more. I think it's just because I'm just down to teach. I'm not even trying to sell anything. But I like you said, I have to say it, because if you don't know, you don't know. But where I really, focus on this, and thank you so much for that thumbs up. What I mostly do is I communicate through email. So the best way to do this is to click the link above. When you click it, you'll see the pop-up. And then once you get the page loaded and you scroll down, you'll see a section that will put your first name and best email. And then you can tick one of the boxes. The ones that make the most sense to you, Great. And then once you do that, let's make that official. And then you'll get redirected to get on a call with me so we can talk for an amount of time, at least 30 minutes. And that can let us, talk about more what you need. And even before the call gets, let's say you schedule for a month from now, I would call you the day you schedule it. Because when you schedule it, out of sight, out of mind. So the day you schedule it, I'll make that connection because it may be our first time talking, or it might be us reconnecting after a while. And that has happened a couple of times. So when I know that, I'll make that call is to make sure first I acknowledge I've received your schedule. And then secondly, we can talk about it so that before I send you any email, before our call, you're able to understand what's going on. Because your website could be on WordPress, it could be on GoDaddy, it could be on Squarespace, it could be on Shopify. I don't know those things. But once I know your website and I do an audit, I'll know exactly where it's coming from. And then we can have that discussion. So I've seen it a lot of times, and I'll definitely, bring that up. But definitely click the link above and that will take you to the section. What I'm planning to do as well, and that's going to start November 1st, just to let you know. Now that Juliana's, putting this out, I'll let you guys know this too. I put it in the email because I like to make it exclusive. On November 1st through December 31st, I'm going to be unlocking and bringing back the SEO Mastermind. And that's something that I literally have open for a few months in the year. I don't have it open all year. So when you have access to the Mastermind will allow you to have access to all these resources like the courses I'm talking about. One thing I'm bringing back as well this holiday season is private podcast audios, because you see, we're on Clubhouse like this. It's getting to a point where I'm going to be moving over these to the private podcast. And just so you know this, to tell you how serious it is, I want to give you guys a quick announcement. This is for the podcast world. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Spotify just partnered with Netflix. I'll say this again. Spotify just partnered with Netflix. So in 2026, you might start watching podcasts on Netflix. I'm just saying, don't wait till it's late, or don't wait till the bus is gone and you're like, oh man, I wish I knew this. Well, you do now. Yeah, whoa, it's big. And if Spotify is partnered with Netflix and they're testing it out right now, just imagine where we're going to be next year. There's YouTube. So imagine Spotify and Netflix team up. Tell me what YouTube is going to do. YouTube is going to have to do something too. So it's getting to a point where if you have a podcast, if you have a website, if you have a product, if you have a service, you can be out there. This marketing thing is decentralized. You just have to position yourself in a place where people can actually find you. And when they connect with you, they trust you and they build with you. So that's why I love doing audio, because the more you're able to connect, the deeper it gets. Some people like reading, but not everyone loves to read a blog. Some people would rather listen to you for 10 minutes than read a 10-minute article. So it really depends on how they want to spend their time and how much quality time they want to spend with you. So that's why I talk about these things exclusively in my email. So click the link above and that will give you insight to that. So thank you, Juliana, for bringing this up again. Butter says, what do you recommend for a startup that doesn't have any product yet and not selling anything yet? Would you create a website and do a coming soon type messaging explaining what you are doing and request people subscribe as early birds to your membership program? Yes. And then someone says, well, I have to think about this distribution impact. Yeah, definitely. Distribution is the key. Think about Walmart, Amazon Fresh, Whole Foods, Home Goods, Home Depot. Like, it keeps going on and on. This is just distribution in its highest capacity. And now when you bring it to a point where it's like with the question Butter asked about, how to start up and what to recommend for a startup, my goal is building infrastructure online first. So if you're a startup and these are the two things I would ask you, this is what I'd ask you on a call. I would say, okay, and this is not a trick question. At this time, within this season, within this quarter, especially now we have 3 months left to the end of the year, or literally 2.5 months left in the year. what is more important to you right now? Time or money? And whichever you have more of, the next question that you're going to answer on top of that, based on the answer you give, because it's a rhetorical question, the next question I'm going to ask is, okay, based on those two, where are you going to spend most of your time and money on when it comes to interacting with people? So if you have a membership program, like for example, with what you said, Butter, if you have a membership program, my goal is to educate you on the program. So what am I doing in this scenario? Pre-purchase, because there are two types of purchases. There's pre-purchase and there's post-purchase, right? Post-purchase is you buy a car and now you start buying oil for your car, right? Pre-purchase is, I want to get this, so I got to go on Amazon and check the reviews before I purchase it. So now if people want to sign up to your membership, the goal is, hey, sign up for this membership and I'll send you a quiz so that you can, get to discover if you're fit for this, or sign up for this and I'll send you a survey and love to know about why you signed up and what interests you the most, or why, it picked up your interest, or why it gave you a little bit of an idea to sign up with your best email. When you start those conversations, you get to know exactly what they're in for. And then you give them options. You give them 4 options. So how I would start is I would get a domain, then get a hosting platform, and then get a mailbox. This is very basic, but this is very essential. After you get the mailbox, you now have a website. Because from having a domain, a hosting, a mailbox, these are 3 access points that are going to be very important for you. Why? The domain is going to be what everyone's going to remember. The hosting is the bandwidth. It's the threshold that's going to sustain your online presence. The mailbox is where your business communications are going to come from, right? So after you look at your mailbox, now your website is going to be where the front facing of the building is going to be coming in. There are 2 types of visitors: new visitors and returning visitors. So if you want to have more returning visitors, or every month or year over year or quarter over quarter, you get more returning visitors, because you're always going to get newer visitors than returning visitors. If you look at an 80-20 Pareto scale or Pareto principle, you can see that most of the time, if you look at it from that benchmark, you'd be getting way more people that are not subscribed to you that are subscribed to you. So the ones that are not subscribed to you, you have to also think about the pre-purchase intent. So talk about on your website, write blogs. Here's your checklist. Here's your onboarding guide. Here's what the membership is about. Why are we even starting this membership? The fastest way to even do this is by doing it on a podcast. Once you do a podcast and talk about it, you now transcribe it into a full blog, which you can use with notebooklm.google.com. Transcribe that, put that into your system on your website, and you're good to go. By the time you look back at a month, you have 4 articles plus 4 podcasts. That means you have 8 links available on the internet talking about 4 different topics that have been split into 2 different ways, text and audio. So by the time you look at your month, looking back, we have 2.5 months to go. That's 4 times 2, 8 times 2, 16. And now we have half of the month to go. So if you do 4 of that, that's about 20. So between now and December 31st, you have 20 pieces of information about your membership. And now in January, you can decide to launch a private podcast where people will pay a fee, a minimal fee, a Netflix fee, a nominal fee, or they sign up to a free membership, or they sign up to your email list, and now you've built up that anticipation. Think about like Nike, when the new, shoes are about to drop, when the new sneakers are about to drop, they'll say, hey, leave your contact information and we'll send you the drop. We'll send you the information. So when you get that email, you're like, boom, it's ready. Here we go, because you're anticipating for that. So as you're whetting their appetite, as you're giving them the information, don't leave them hanging. There's something called a high content value offer exchange. A high value content offer exchange. And what is that? An upgrade. If you like this information, leave your contact and I'll send you a quick checklist, or here are the top 10 tips to use for that. So by the time you're looking at your visitors, let's say you have 1,000 visitors on your website and 20% of them sign up. Now you have a good amount of people who are interested, who can still come back to your website after you send them an email. So the people who are interested are the people you want to connect with. right? Who you love loves you, and who loves you is who you love, right? So there's going to be a reciprocal energy that you're going to have to exchange with a person when it comes to that type of context. So when you create content with people and for people, that's how you're able to really understand how that builds down into those things as well. So thank you for your insight. Definitely putting in my contacts. Yes, Butter, definitely connecting with you too. And that was a great question. Juliana, Austin, would you love to add on to that? Even in your experience in your industry, what would you say?
I'm gearing up for the next tax season with all the insight that you just gave me. So thank you.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Yes, this is big. You know, if you do this, it would help you so much. You know, if you have a website, this is the time to really plan. This is the time to really start thinking about where you want to go. Like, we're looking at a holiday season full of holidays. I don't know, how many holidays do we have? If we really count the number of holidays, we just had one on Monday. So how many holidays do we have before the end of the year? If you really think about that, not enough. Simon says not enough. How many holidays do you need, Simon, in a year? In less than 3 months, that's going to be buku crazy, from a couple of weeks into a couple of days into a couple of weekends, spilling over into Monday. So, I mean, there's not enough days or even hours in a day to begin with, but there are a lot of things you can do within an hour. But it just depends on how you're able to divide that. So it's big. And I love that you mentioned that. That was a good one. That was a good one for sure. Just the tariffs are concerned, though. I know it's something that, for me, I think when I look at opportunities, markets, business, you know, entrepreneurship, management, service, operations, whatever it is, we just keep learning. That's the beauty of what I do. Like, the more I know, the more I don't know. Like, I love to learn. I love learning because it allows me to explore more and do more and think further beyond. And, you know, when I think about ways to really connect, I'm just like, okay, how can we do these things a little differently? So if you have a business, if you have a product or a service, it's now for you to decide, okay, I use Shopify or I use WordPress. How do I put SEO so that people can find me on my website because I have an e-commerce platform? The best way to optimize is to create content on your website that's going to attract the right people. First, you're attracting visitors. These visitors are going to turn into readers. Then the readers are going to turn into clickers, if I can say it like that. And they turn into action takers, right? Because when somebody sees something they like, they're going to be leaning more towards it. If you like this purple dress or this red dress or this red shoe or this purple shoe, you're going to like it for something or for a reason. Or you're thinking, I'll like to wear this at an event, or I like to wear this because this is going to match with what I have at home. There's always going to be something interconnected with your decision because you have a preconceived notion of something that's going to allow you to make an internal decision based on emotion and also based on logic. So if you're creating content for people online to read, to watch, to listen, then what they're coming for is going to be contextually connected to what they want. That's why you always say with marketing and advertising, give them what they want before you give them what they need. Because sometimes you might need this thing, but you don't really think it's necessary. But it's like, hey, is it urgent or is it important? You know, so you have to now look at those two factors and answer those questions. And it's kind of like a two-factor authentication question, if I can put it like that. So if you really look at the long-term effect of these things, the best way to think about this is using Shopify, getting your website started. If you're starting from scratch, if you're starting from the beginning, if you're just starting off, you just wanting to, build one product, 2 products, 5, 10, use Shopify. If you want to really go like robust, use WordPress, but just make sure you're prepared for what WordPress is going to come with, because a lot of things happen when it comes to editing, changing different things, tabs, links, plugins. It gets really sophisticated. I've seen all kinds of websites. Some websites that you have to open it from a staging. From a staging, you have to now take it to the live section out with big companies, with corporate companies. So when you look at all these different things, it's not just a link or domain or just a sign up or a button. It's not, there's a lot of information that's technically going behind the scenes. Is this button round or is this button square? That's a big question, because that's also going to impact your click-through rate. It's going to impact your, I would even call it your aesthetic, because when you look at all these shapes also matter on your website. Your font matters. If you send somebody an email with font size 8 and then somebody else gets an email with font size 16, which one are they going to read more? The one that's 16, because people don't want to squint to see. So when you send that font size 8 email, yes, you might have a 42 kilobytes email that you've sent, but if it was just maybe 200 kilobytes and now you've added more depth, that's going to open it more. It's a little heavier, and now there's something valuable in there. You know what I mean, Juliana?
Yeah, so I wanted to also drop in, I always want to deal with the numbers sometimes. As we enter November, right now is budget season. So most small businesses, and I know this is off topic, a lot of you don't do budgets, right? So I encourage everybody to create a budget and don't forget about marketing. Marketing is not an expense on your budget line, on your profit and loss. Marketing is an investment, because with an investment of $200, for instance, a good marketing with a good expert can yield you 10, 20,000 depending on the type of industries that you are in. So all of you should be creating a budget. Budgeting is not difficult. Go to Google Sheets. They have templates. You can Google it now with the AI. You can even put it in the AI and say, create a budget for me. If you have QuickBooks, they have a template for budgeting, and it will walk you through how to do it. Plug the numbers in. Don't worry about whether you can achieve it or not. Shoot for the moon. I tell my clients I double their revenues. Whatever they made 2025, we're going for double. Because once you put the amount there, you stretch your brain. You send a message to your subconscious, and it's going to get you there. I have somebody from 2018. I've taken him from 38,000. This year we hit 600,000. So I give them the numbers and we come up with a plan to achieve it. So I want all of you to put together a budget and make a budget for marketing. Hire the right expert to get it done. Do not try to spend 10 hours trying to do something that somebody like Favour would take like 30 minutes or even 5 minutes in some cases, and then you'll be spending 2-3 hours trying to figure it out. Get the expert, stick with your zone of genius, and that is how you are able to grow your businesses. So next year by now, you'll come here and give me your testimony. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Juliana. That is definitely true. You have to think about, your open rates, click rates, your conversion rates, your impression rates, your cost per acquisition, your cost per result, your cost per click, your cost per mail. Like, these are things that you have to read. If you don't know these numbers or these acronyms or this jargon, it's going to be hard to understand or even decipher or even decode what you're supposed to demystify from the graph that you're looking at. So it's really important to really analyze these things. And like you said, Juliana, look for somebody who actually knows these things or reads these things. This is what I do every day. I eat data. If I can eat data, I can say it that way, because I have a Master of Science, background. So I'm very big on analytics, data mining, looking at projects, understanding the graphs, understanding the curves. I can read between the lines. So it's very important to look at these things and see what's best for you. Dan, said, which is true, WordPress is mostly for very technical people at times. Yeah, if you can use WordPress extensively and prepare for anything, then you just don't want to be there in the first place, because you don't want to stress. And Ziad said also, of course, with Shopify, you can definitely use it. It's a great platform too. I call it the safe zone. And you can make websites rank in 3 months. And just like Simon says, yes, for sure, the need to nail down the ROI. Many don't follow the return by channel. Exactly. That point right there is what I was even going to tell you to use Ziad, because you can rank on Google. Even right now, ranking is not even a thing. I mentioned this a couple days ago, even just not too long ago, just last week, Google released, I don't know if you saw this, but the Reddit stocks went down. And I'm just giving you like a macro scale overview. With that happening, because of the cause and effect of Google removing something called a num equals 100 parameter. In other words, you know how the pagination used to be back then? You'd scroll all the way down to google.com and then you hit number 2, hit page 3, hit page 4, on and on. Those were taken off. So that also limited AI's server response system, because ChatGPT, Perplexity, Cloud, they're all picking it up from a source, right? They're all picking it up from a main source. Right, that's why it's called natural language processing, NLP, large language models, LLM. So these are just words just to simply say that there's a communication or language that is happening, or I'll call it a bridge of communication between different servers talking to each other about the same thing that's going to help a cumulative effect, because all these platforms are cumulatively connected within a system. So if I'm connecting to Google, you're connecting to Google. Someone else is connecting to Wikipedia. Someone else is connecting to Apple. Everyone is connecting to something, and they're all interconnected. That's why it's called the semantic World Wide Web. So everything is semantically interconnected. So if you're looking at this from a 30,000 viewpoint and just looking at the little nitty gritties, then it's very important to consider these things, because ranking is just going to be a thing. So if Google has done that, that is just meaning, in other words, that it's even harder for you to even rank, quote unquote. So branding, when I look at AI mentions, I don't even look at it as ranking with ChatGPT. That's what people say. I would normally call it earning brand mentions on ChatGPT or any other AI server. Because if you want to be the response from AI, it's because you have contextual feedback and backing and evidence to support that in form of multimedia formats, text, audio, and video. If you have a blog and your competitor has a blog and an audio, and the other competitor has a blog, audio, and video on YouTube, who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to get more? If you look at 1 times 50, 2 times 50, 3 times 50. So if you now look at that score, you wonder, okay, someone has 50, someone has 100, someone has 150. Now, the one that has 150 has way more leverage and equity, because they're able to disseminate more information at a faster rate, because they're able to use 3 different versions compared to you that has 1 or 2. So podcasting, ranking, these are all great things, but right now it's not about ranking. It's really about showing up for the right result in the right space at the right time. That's really where it's boiling down to. So gone are the days for ranking, but you also want to be a person that is seen within those positions as well. So yeah, you can rank in 3 months, which is great. But if that ranking does not equals to sales, at some point it's going to be a sinking ship or a sinking sand, and you don't want that to be you. So that's why I always say, even before you run ads and work with clients, first 3 months, I always say, please do not run ads. Because if you run ads, we're going to be shooting blanks, because we don't have any database to work with. Yeah, you can run ads and say, yeah, here are all the Google keywords you can use. Yeah. But if my Google search console doesn't have 100 keywords, why am I spending $100 to find keywords that are not even existing on my website organically? That's why I love earning first before you pay. So when you earn that trust, when you earn that respect, when you earn that credibility, when you earn that backlink, or when you earn that mention from ChatGPT or whoever it is, or wherever it is, you have earned that click. You've earned that time. You've earned that space. You've earned that recommendation. So it's a big deal. Whether you're on Shopify or WordPress, it doesn't matter. Those are major things to, think about as well. And the return by channel that Simon said is very, very important. So thank you for bringing that up as well. Austin says Vanader, I hope I said it correctly, Vanader is a great YouTube channel for econ folks. Is that okay? And he's killer good at ROI per channel. That's Amazon, Walmart, Shopify distributors. Yeah, talk about this a little more. I want to hear this before I come to Butter's question. Thank you, Austin.
Oh, sorry. Was that for
Yeah,
me?
I wanted to know more about what you mentioned in the chat.
Yeah. So I think Vanader is a multi-channel e-commerce guy who sells on all the platforms, and he has some great visual examples for the folks that kind of like Butterbean asking about how do you measure return on advertising. Well, that may depend on what channel you're advertising on, and if it's PPC or some other model of advertising, and what are the costs for that channel to deliver, right? Because the fees you pay to Amazon, it's going to be different than maybe the Walmart marketplace versus your own Shopify or WordPress store that you own, and if you ship it out yourself. So there's, sometimes it's spreadsheets or there's e-com specific software to help track that, but it's really only takes a couple of variables to consider those costs at the product or the sale level, and then as well as the kind of aggregated channel version of that, and that can help you determine which marketplaces are best for you to be on based on those costs and which model works for you. So definitely recommend that channel if anyone's an e-commerce seller.
Great insights. Thank you so much for that. You mentioned something I want to piggyback on a little bit when it comes to the channels. When you look at sales and distribution networks, it's really heavy on your website. Because if you think about it, right, let's say you sell a product on Amazon, and because you sell a product on Amazon, the person that picks you as let me just, for lack of a better word, a point of purchase, and they choose your product over the other because of how you delivered your product within the aesthetics and the experience end to end. If that happens on Amazon and I click on the name of the vendor, whoever that vendor is going to have a profile that was set up on Amazon first. And most times, even if you're uploading an app to the App Store or the Google Play Store, most times, and I'll say it again in a different way, when you sign up to, let's say you do a business account or you create a business account for social media, most times, more often than not, you will have to put in your website. So if you're selling on Amazon and you have a website connected, you sell on Etsy, you have a website connected, you sell on Facebook Shop or Instagram Shop or TikTok Shop, wherever you sell, Amazon Shop, on ShopPay, and you have your website, that's a great way to also attribute your sales, because all those links are linking back to your website, and that's how you're able to determine where you're even getting the most attraction from. Because Shopify will tell you in the analytics section, hey, this is the source by refer. It will say Facebook, it will say Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok, ChatGPT. It will say exactly where it's coming from, right? And then if you have Google Search Console, Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, if you use Fathom Analytics, if you use Microsoft Clarity, these are all free platforms. Bing Webmaster Tools, they're all free. You can set them up yourself. That's what we'll set up for you when we start working with you. If you have those set up, we're already 50% through. But if you've never set those up, that's the first thing we'll do on a call, because without those things being set up, there's nothing we're tracking. There's nothing we can give you as a report. There's nothing we can scale back to. There's nothing we can scale from. So it's very important to look into those details so that as a business, when you're running all these applications or running these platforms, it's very easy for you to detect which platform is giving you the most return on your investment, whether it's content, media assets, whatever it is. It's going to have to come from a different source, and that source has to come from a place, and a source that you can trust because you're going to use that place consistently. And to Butter's question, how do you measure the return on advertising, impressions in particular? How do you measure when impressions lead to a purchase? That's a great question too, asking as it relates to investment in advertising versus ad expense. So when you say advertising versus ad expense, I want to get to know a little bit more context if you're available, Butter, because that's a very specific question and I don't want to answer it the wrong way because it could go anyway. So love to hear your thoughts, Butter. Thank you for joining today. How are you?
I'm good. How are
I'm
you?
good, thank you.
Good. The reason I asked that is because the young lady that was speaking, who left the room, had mentioned that advertising was an investment, and so you should budget for it. And so I was thinking about, I think it was Juliana. I was thinking about what that would look like on the books, the accounting for it. And when I looked it up, I asked what was the difference between an expense and an investment, in your business. So like you could put it on there as like an investment in the one of your investment accounts versus an expense account. I was looking at it from a accounting perspective, and basically it was saying that if you can measure the return on the if you can measure the return, then you can put it on the books as as an investment. But if you can't measure the return, then it might make more sense to, and I might not be saying this right because I'm not an accountant, but if you can't actually measure how the amount relates directly to something like a monetary value or something you get in return, then how could you quantify it as a investment? I really took that maybe too literally when she said it, but I was just wondering if anybody had any insight into how you would look at that from an accounting perspective. I hope that made sense.
It did. It made a lot of sense. And I'm also not 100% disclaimer. I'm not an accountant, and definitely shout out to Juliana, and she will definitely get you right. Juliana Kennedy CPA will get you right. She's great, and you can reach out to her as well. From what I would say from that point of view, because I have heard her talk about it, and I've also done it myself as a business to also look into that effect, is if you're looking at it as an expense and an investment, those are two different things. So this is what she meant when she explained it to me the first time when she talked about something like this. It was a while back, and every time I always think about it when I tell people, even when we work with clients, I always say this SEO you're paying for, this investment you're paying for is not an expense, it is an investment. And why it's an investment, one, is if you're looking at it from an expense, quote unquote, standpoint, right? Because you're paying for a service, the investment for the expense you've paid for is going to yield return on that investment based on the credibility, one, and the scalability, two, of your business after a period of time, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. And when you look at it from a quarterly perspective, for example, if let's say you invested in SEO for 3 months. Let's say in month 1, you had 0 visitors. By month 3, you have, let's say 100 visitors, right? And let's say it's local. I just want to keep it very minimal, just for an example, just to give you that highlight. When you do something like that and you are getting more visitors than you were before, but these visitors are also signing up to your email list, and these email list is now turning into customers that are connecting with you, that is an investment because your business has now gained more in profit than it earned in the beginning. So if you look at month 1, month 2, month 3, you've been able to get more credibility. Let's say you got featured on a podcast. Let's say you got featured on a magazine. Let's say you got featured on a TV network. And now it's going back to your website. You've done all the SEO. People have reached out to you. People are sending you emails, requests for proposals. All these things are happening because you have set up an infrastructure online as an investment, just like you invest in a house. to increase in value. And one time you may want to sell the house or transfer the ownership, but at any point in time, you have that intellectual property asset as a place to call yours. So when you do that for your website now is becoming that same intellectual property. So the investment you're making is the literal fact that the things that you would have been looking to do on your own is now being done by a professional or by a team of professionals who are now taking that same thing you'd have done on your own, but now turn it into something that's competitively advantageous to your business. Because now you're on the market and you're actually tapping into market share of the distribution market you want to tap into. So as a business, when you're looking at it from that perspective, yes, you'll say, okay, this expense is advertising services. That's something you can write off on your taxes. When you now talk to Juliana, she'll give you all the details on how that happens. But when you now run these things, home offices, expenses, stationery, electronics, all these things that you're using for your business, yes, they may be called expenses on a profit and loss statement sheet, a P&L sheet, or a balance sheet. When you now look at it long term and you say that, okay, every year, let's say your company is having a hardware depreciation of 5% or 2% or whatever the percentage may be, you know that every year you're able to calculate those things. When you have accounts receivables, you're able to see all those things and know exactly where that's turning into for your business. But when you now look at it from the perspective of, I have a business, I need a website, I need traffic, I need leads, I need people to know that I'm here. That's where that investment comes in, and you're putting that into making sure that you're getting that back. Because when you start running ads, that ad that you're running is an expense. It's still an investment, yes, contextually, because you're spending money to make money, just like you invest to make money. But the way you're investing is not just because you're spending money because you want to have a website or a logo or a business card. It's because you know that when you buy this website, when you pay for this and invest into this domain, you know that 5 years from now, your asset value is going to increase, your net worth is going to increase, your business is going to increase in value, your valuation is going to increase. So that's the investment part she's looking into, as opposed to it just being, I'm just going to pay for something because I need it today and I just need to have something on so that I can now, let's say, apply for grants because I need a website. Those things happen in between, but majorly is to make sure that at least online you have that presence, and then every quarter you're able to articulate that and get that growth curve on a consistent basis. Does that help, Butter?
It does sort of, but I was really trying to kind of hone in on, for example, impressions. Like the value of an impression is based on, let's say, traffic. Well, it is based on traffic. Okay, so how do you determine what part of that traffic actually turns into a sale? And then how, and I know this isn't a perfect science, but my question is, how then can you take the total sales that you could track to impressions to have a good number when you talk about a return on your promotion or your advertising? I don't know if it's possible, but I'm thinking that it might be a very sophisticated way to do it. Like, for example, at the end of a purchase online, you could say, how did you find out about our product? And then they would say, I found out through, and you could actually have one of the answers be advertising. Then you could be pretty confident that it was based on your advertising. But how do you, so I guess I kind of answered my own question in that you could set up a way so that you could firmly say, that the return on my investment in advertising is somewhere around this figure based on these attributes or based on these things. That's kind of where I was going. And like I say, that might be too much of a worry. But if you really wanted to put it on the books and value it as an investment I could understand that. I would like to kind of go deeper into that with her about, because I'm looking at it from an accounting perspective, and maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I should, but I can't wrap my head around. I guess I can't wrap my head around using the term investment versus expense, but I would like to. So I'm asking questions. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Butter. That was a great way of putting it. I think like what I said initially and what you've asked, I'll now like wrap it with a bow, or just tie with a bow and put a ribbon on it and say it this way, just to make sure that it all comes into one piece. When you have, especially for the topic of today, when you have a Shopify account or a WordPress account, or a Shopify website or a WordPress website, either of these two websites that you have, whether it's Shopify or WordPress, is going to attribute to, one, how you're going to see your sales run in. So let's say you sell on eBay, or you sell on Pinterest or Target, or you sell somewhere that is going to be attributed to, like you said, to that investment that you initially made as an expense. You can see that on your website. So that's why analytics are so important. I was mentioning this earlier. For e-commerce optimization, whether it's product or service, analytics is going to be your bread and butter. It's going to be the one thing that's going to make the needle move. Because if I'm able to look at all these analytics and see where people are coming from, it tells me where the source is referred to. Even Simon talked about it earlier when it comes to referrals and where you're able to get those sources and where they're being referenced from. It all comes back to your website. So when you look at your website long term, your website now becomes the fortress and the anchor so that more people can find you consistently within those different assets. And thank you for that thumbs up, but I appreciate that. And I'm glad that it made sense, because when you look at your website and you see that your website has analytics talking about all the platforms that you're showing up on organically, and let's say you now run ads on the platform, let's say the top 3 or the top 2 that are getting you the most organic traffic, and you're running ads on those platforms as an investment because you're running ads on them to get the same feedback. If somebody purchases it or comes to your website and you have a system already that says, hey, sign up to my email list to get this, by the time they have signed up to your email list, you've gotten so much information about them that in the beginning, it has become a friendly connection, as opposed to it just being a visitor visiting your website and not coming back, or coming back if they choose to. So when you now have a website that you can track that information, you can get to see where they're coming from, where they're going to. That's why using like a platform like Google Analytics is good. Fathom Analytics is good. It will tell you, oh, they came from a Chrome browser, so that means people are using Chrome. Or they came from Safari, okay, that means they use Apple. So you will start to see the signs, and it will kind of be blurry a little bit if you don't really see it. But eventually, the more you're able to look into it, you notice, oh, okay, people listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or they use Chrome browsers, or they use this, or they use this type of resolution, or they use their tablets. That's how you're able to know who they are. So when you start advertising, you start thinking about your creatives, the aspect ratios, your media elements or your media assets. All those things can attribute back into how you're able to, create those expenses. So that was a great question, Butter. And I hope I was able to answer. Let me know in the chat if that, gave you a full picture. But definitely when it comes to accounting, thank you for the confirmation. When it comes to the accounting, there's totally different, separate things. Finance, accounting, marketing, 3 different departments. But they all work together to make sure that everything is, simultaneously interconnected and also operating at a high performance and a high capacity as well. So this was a great topic as well. And I love that you're able to bring this in. Simon said something too in the chat before we go. Marketing is best when integrated. So a radio ad will lead to more website visits. Worth it? That needs to be analyzed, even if not easy to measure. It's possible. And I would love to know, Simon, if you mean radio, like frequency, FM, AM radio, or do you mean broadcast like podcasts now? Because that's different. And if it's radio, that's a whole different conversation, because radio now deals with listenership. It now deals with Nielsen. It's a whole different ball game. But if you're able to like see where it's coming from based on location, and then people sign up, and then you have a website, and that website is able to track where people are visiting from the most. If your radio station is at that location, then most people listen within that zip code. We do a lot of zip code marketing. So if you're within that zip code or that area code, then eventually you start to draw the line, or even, connect the dots, because you can actually see where people are pointing from, where they're pointing to, and then it gets easier over time. With podcasts, it's very easy to tell, because you have a podcast hosting platform, and it's easy to detect and know where people are listening from too. If it's radio, it might be different, but there's a way you can tell if you now bring them back into your website. Even with TV now, right? There's a website called vibe.co, which we also are partnered with. And if you look at the way let me just give you like a very general example. I'm sure you've watched, a movie on Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu, which is about to go. And all these, things that you're looking at, you're like, okay, where do we watch most of our things? Where do we watch these movies? When you watch these movies, even YouTube to even begin with, you see ads on these platforms. They come from a source. So when you see these ads coming from a place, you can run ads there too, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, but tracking them is going to be something that's going to be hard to do. It's tedious, because it's also very open surface or open wide net, if I can call it that. But if you're looking at specificity, niche down, specific target markets, audio will definitely be a great way to go with a podcast, and that can really take you really far. So I hope this helped you and gave you some insights. These were great questions today. Austin, what would you say between Shopify and WordPress if you were to choose one? Especially for e-commerce, what would you choose and why, before we go?
I mean, especially if I'm under 50 SKUs, or if I'm a service-based business, WordPress for sure. I just love open source way too much. But yeah, if you have more complex needs, or you're a multi-channel e-commerce seller with maybe 100 SKUs or more, then maybe Shopify. But I'm definitely a WordPress guy.
Hold on, wait a minute. Did you say, I was thinking it was the opposite. So you're saying if it's more than 50, if it's less than 50, use WordPress. If it's more than 50, use Shopify?
Yeah, correct. And then once you get above like maybe 100 to 200 above that on Shopify, then it's going to get kind of hairy, depending on your SKU management. But yeah, that's just my experience.
Okay, I like that. That's why I asked, because I would love to hear different thoughts and processes, because, there's always going to be something that works for you. And that's why these platforms are big, and that's why we're talking about them. Everybody wins. You get a website.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not the end all be all. Like, there's big ass companies like Gymshark, the athletic company, and Mattel, the toy company. They use Shopify, and they probably have thousands of SKUs. So what do we know? They found a way to make it happen. They probably had to hack the back end and do some crazy stuff, but they found a way to make it work. So maybe you can too.
It is possible, and I believe you can definitely do that. There are huge brands. Like, there's a brand I was, looking at earlier today, and it's a huge brand. They're even in the actual grocery stores, and their website is on Shopify. So you wonder, is it really the platform, or is it just the setup and the operations behind it? So it's really up to you, but it's definitely possible. Any of these platforms can work. I would go with Shopify myself. If I'm thinking about, scaling and really having that type of e-commerce experience altogether, but I also use WordPress too if I want to really go custom, open source, and just hit the ground running and make sure it looks really aesthetically pleasing, so you can have really great bandwidth and use hosting platforms like Hostinger or HostGator or any platform that you use, Bluehost, GoDaddy, and have a great time on the platform. So this was a great discussion. Thank you, Austin, for bringing this in, and I'm so glad I talked about this Shopify and WordPress saga, if I can call it that, because it was definitely a versus that I wanted to bring down and let people know you can use any platform, but e-commerce is really up to you on that. Thank you, Butter. Thank you for those questions. Those were great, and it's great connecting with you. We can definitely connect and talk more, and you can click the link above so that you don't miss out on the emails that we send out, and you can get that insight so that you don't miss out on anything. Not Famous, Dr. J, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Princess, thank you for being here as always. Michelle, Santosh, I hope I said it correctly, and Charan, I appreciate you too. You're all appreciated. This is the Marketing Club. This is a We Don't Play podcast show. This is a space where you listen, you live, you learn, and you earn, and you're able to definitely do a lot here, especially when you connect with us on this type of level. So we have a lot more to give. This is just the beginning. So sit back, stay tight, and don't forget, what you're doing is for the people. So the more you do it for people, the more people do it for you, because we are a large community and we can all serve and do things at a high capacity. So thank you for being here. And I also see your chat too, Butter. Yes, I'm glad you enjoyed the room, and I'll definitely connect with you very soon. Thank you all. Have a blessed night. Enjoy your evening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Now, that was an episode, right? Thank you so much for listening to the We Don't Play podcast show. I'm so glad that you're here and you are sticking tight with us, especially to the very end. Now, this is season 11 and we're going to do it differently. And I want to make sure that every episode you listen to has something to give back so that you can also learn more after you listen. Now, We Don't Play podcast show is where you listen, you live, you learn, and you earn. So if you're in any of those positions out of those 4, please make sure that you reach out to me. Send out an email through info@playinc.online. That's info@playinc.online. Or you could go to playinc.online, which is a website, www.playinc.online, playinc.online, and schedule a call so that we can get you on an SEO discovery call to talk about your business and help you with your marketing needs. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this helped you. See you in the next episode. God bless you. Jesus loves you.